All right, CNT120, we are looking at our Chapter 3 lab. Just a reminder, Chapter 3, we're looking at how is data transported over our networks. So in this lab, we're going to look at a number of different things dealing with addressing and moving data on networks, namely looking at UDP and TCP and the role they play, specifically TCP three-way handshake. Then we'll come back in future podcasts and look at IP version 4 and IP version 6. We'll look at a couple other protocols, including IGMP and ARP, and the role they play, and then a couple commands that we run into in dealing with these. Netstats, trace routes, path pings, that sort of thing. All right, so let's dig in on the first one here. We're looking at UDP and TCP. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure our PC is connected to college network, if you will. I'm going to do a quick verification of ipconfig and verify my machine is getting an IP address from the college, and I can tell it is. So I know we're up and going that way. And then I'm going to launch our Wireshark. Now, if you remember, we mentioned this before. Wireshark, protocol analyzer, packet capture tool. This is a utility that is safe to use in here in our labs. It's safe to install and use on your home network at home. Just don't install it and run it where you work. It's going to look like you're trying to do something sketchy. So just my little disclaimer there. I'm going to launch my Wireshark tool here on the desktop. I'm going to get it all ready. Do the whole remind me later. I'm going to highlight my Ethernet 3 NIC. I'm going to get ready to capture. Now that I have that ready, I'll make sure I have my browser launched. Okay, here's my D2L page, but I'll open up a new tab over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a Wireshark capture, and I'm going to capture me loading a web page. After the web page is loaded, I will stop my capture. So I have both pieces ready. I'll come over here to Wireshark and I'll start my capture. It's going to capture a lot of packets. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to load a web page I have not been to yet today, imsa.com. I'm going to let that load. There it is there, the home page loaded. I will come over to Wireshark and I will stop, because I'm really only interested in grabbing these packets of me loading the web page. So I will minimize this now. I don't really need that now. I'm going to make my Wireshark larger so that I can work on it. And what I want to look at is, specifically, I'm going to dig down and look for the TCP three-way handshake. But to get there, I'm going to do a little side trip. If you remember in your reading, domain names like this right here, in this case imsa.com, got translated into an IP address, and then we connected to that IP address, it's a web server, to download this website. So I'm going to actually look for the DNS packets, and that's going to tell me the IP address I'm looking for, and then I will look for my three-way handshake. So I'm going to look for the DNS stuff first. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to put a little filter, and I'm just going to put DNS in the top bar and hit enter. And I see quite a few DNS packets have moved around. Okay, that's fine. What I'm looking for is my query for imsa.com. So up here, I'm looking for my query of imsa.com to find out what IP address it gave me. And you'll notice there's actually a couple queries here. Maybe a server was busy. Maybe it handed me the next server. Okay, not a huge deal. I'm looking for simply this query and the response. So what I can do is I can either look at this packet here and see the query here and the response here. That's what these two arrows are showing you. Or I can actually right-click on this and follow this UDP stream so it filters everything else out so that I'm looking at my query and my response. I can do it either way. But I'm going to look at the query. This is me sending a query to the DNS server saying, hey, do you by chance know the IP address of imsa.com? And if I look at the reply coming back, that's the next packet here, and I'll see it says response. Here's my IP address to the DNS server. Here's the DNS server back to me. If I look at this response now, down here under query, there's an additional header of answer. It's like, hey, the address you're looking for is, in this case, 191.237.2774. So it said, hey, the website you're looking for is at that IP address. Great. So now I found the IP address that I need, and I need this to do the next step. That's why I'm taking a little side detour here to do this. So I have the query, I have the response, and I know the IP address of the website I'm looking for. So I'm going to be looking for my machine 172.23 talking to this 191.237. So I'm going to come up here and get rid of this filter. I don't need this filter anymore. And I'm going to look for, here's my 177 packet. And I'm going to look for very shortly after this, me trying to talk to this 191. And I see here's 172 and 191 talking to each other. That's good enough. That's all I really need at this point. I'm going to highlight that, and I'm now going to do another filter. I'm going to right click on top and say follow TCP stream. I want to see this communication session between me and the server. So again, I will close this out, and I'm now going to look at my packets going from me to this 191, 191 back to me. So here is the TCP session of me talking to that web server. That's what I'm really after, and that's what I'm actually doing here. I followed the UDP stream here. On the next page, there was all the UDP packet, looking at that. I'm now looking at the follow the TCP packet. That's what I'm actually trying to do here. So I'm now going to look a little closer at these and see these packets. So again, this middle window here, I'm going to open this up so I can see it. This shows all the header fields: Ethernet header layer 2, IP header layer 3, TCP header layer 4. I'm going to open the TCP header because that's what I'm really interested in. And I'm actually going to look at the flags field here. I'm going to open the flags field. And you'll notice that I have sync flag in here. I have up here, where is all of my flags? There we are. There's my sync flag. There's my acknowledgement flag. Okay. Those are going to be becoming important here in a minute. Well, if you remember when reading about TCP, before we do a connection-oriented session with like downloading a web page, TCP does the three-way handshake. I talk to a server and try to synchronize. So here is that synchronization packet from me to the server saying, hey, I would like to synchronize with you so that we can transfer our data reliably and not lose anything. Well, the next TCP packet here, TCP segment, is the server 191 talking to me 172, and if I look a little closer, I see the synchronization bit is set as well as the acknowledgement. So if you remember in your reading, it's going to acknowledge my synchronization. It's going to say, oh, by the way, here's my synchronization too. And if you remember from your reading, we are swapping basically byte counter numbers, if you will, so that we can keep track of all these bytes going back and forth. So I sent a synchronization to the server acknowledged that, sent in synchronization back to me, and if I look at the third packet here, the third segment, I'm going to see the acknowledgement bit set of me acknowledging the server synchronization. And then the very next packet is me asking the server, hey, oh, by the way, now that we're like all reliably set up here, can I have the web page? So I see a get HTTP request. So if I close my TCP header and open up HTTP, I see that this is an actual get where I'm going to request this website. Hey, give me this website. Give it to me, please. Give me this IMSA.com thing. So there's my three-way handshake of me talking to this web server. This happened when I loaded this web page. That's the very first thing that happened, and then I got the web page. That's what I'm looking for here. And that's this part of the lab. I'm having you look at all of those flag fields of those first three packets. Okay. Well, let's now look at a little graph. We want to look at a flow graph. So, excuse me, I'm going to come up here and go statistics, and I'm going to come down here and I'm going to look for the flow graph. There it is right there. I'm going to look at the flow graph, and this is going to show me, I just want to see the displayed packets. That's all I want to see. And this actually shows the first three packets, the first three packets of my transfer, first three segments, and this is my TCP three-way handshake, sync, acknowledge. That is my three-way handshake of me talking to this web server. Hopefully this makes a little more sense than instead of just reading in a book. This is actually what my machine is doing. Those three segments are going back and forth. The three-way handshake is occurring for me to reliably get this web page and get all the pieces. It's kind of amazing to think about. Every time you load a web page, this kind of thing is going on. That's pretty cool. So what I'm going to do now is I'm also going to, there's my three-way handshake. I'm going to save this graph because this is part of my submission for the lab. So down here at the bottom, I'll do a save as, and I'm just going to point this, I'm going to point it to my 120 folder. You can point it to your desktop. And I'm going to give it, I think I have you give it a name of, let me get my right name here so I'm not giving you a bum steer. I have you give it a name of something like, where are we? There we're at three-way handshake, TCP three-way handshake. So I'll say TCP three-way handshake. There we go. And I'm just going to save it as a PDF. That's fine. And I will want to, before I close all this stuff, I'll go to my 120 folder here, and I'll open my TCP three-way handshake. There it is. And I'll make sure I do have it. And that is proof of you getting your Wireshark and your TCP three-way handshake. Okay, so there's the first part, looking at our, in this case, UDP and TCP, mainly looking at the TCP three-way handshake.